The stars burned cold in the Calreth system as Commander Thalos Var watched his fleet die. His command deck trembled with each impact against the shields. Red warning lights painted the faces of his crew in shades of blood. Through the viewport, he could see 3 of his destroyers breaking apart under the relentless assault. Their hulls split open like fruit, spilling atmosphere and bodies into the void. Shield strength at 40%, his tactical officer reported. Her voice stayed calm as their training demanded. The vaccine did not panic. They did not flee. They faced death with dignity, as their ancestors had for 10,000 years. Thalos gripped the command rail. His 6 fingers wrapped tight around the metal. How many ships do we have left? 47, Commander. The enemy has over 400. 400 Krethic ships. The numbers had been bad from the start, but now they were impossible. The Krethic swarm had come to the Calreth system 3 weeks ago. They had not sent diplomats or offered terms. They simply arrived and began killing. The Krethic fought with bioorganic ships that looked like enormous insects. Their hulls were grown, not built. They moved in perfect coordination, like parts of a single mind. When one ship died, the others learned from its death. They adapted. They evolved. And they never stopped coming. Commander, the Council responds to our distress call. His communications officer looked up from her screen, hope flickering in her eyes. What do they say? They are still debating. They say the situation requires careful consideration. Thalos closed his eyes. Careful consideration. His people were dying and the Galactic Council was talking. He had expected nothing else. The Council had been arguing for weeks while the Krethic consumed system after system. Every species had their own interests, their own fears, their own reasons to wait. Acknowledged, he said quietly. He thought of his bondmate, Sela, waiting on the homeworld below. He thought of their 2 children, barely old enough to understand what war meant. He had sworn to protect them. He had sworn to return, but some oaths could not be kept. All ships, Thalos announced over the fleet channel, assume last stand formation. We make them pay for every meter. Across the battlefield, the remaining vaccine ships began to move. They formed a circle, each vessel facing outward. It was an ancient formation, one that let warriors see each other's faces as they died. It was inefficient. It was impractical, but it was their way. The Krethic pressed forward. Their ships made no sound in the vacuum, but Thalos imagined he could hear them chittering with hunger. They sensed victory. They smelled blood. On the bridge, Thalos pulled up a recording interface. His hands moved across the controls with practiced ease. If he was going to die, he would leave a message. Something for his family to remember him by. My beloved Sela, he began, speaking into the recorder. If you are hearing this, then I have joined the ancestors. Do not grieve long. Tell our children that their father died protecting what he loved. Tell them, Commander! The sensor officer's voice cut through his words. Spatial anomalies detected. Multiple contacts emerging from inside the engagement zone. Thalos looked up sharply. Inside? That's impossible. No one drops out of faster-than-light travel inside a combat area. The gravitational interference would tear a ship apart. I'm reading it clearly, sir. The signatures are unlike anything in our database. They're not Krethic. They're not any known species. For a moment, hope and fear warred in Thalos's chest. Then his tactical display updated and his breath caught. Ships. Dozens of them materializing out of nowhere in formation. They were strange vessels, angular and brutal, where most galactic ships were smooth and elegant. They looked like weapons given form, all hard edges and obvious gun ports. Identification? Thalos demanded. The communications officer worked her console frantically. Transponders identify them as Terran. Sir, those are human ships. Humans? Thalos felt his confusion deepen. The humans were newcomers to the galactic community. They had been discovered only 5 years ago, living on a single world they called Earth. By galactic standards, they were primitives. Their technology was crude. Their ships were small. They had no powerful allies, no ancient lineage. The Council had classified them as a protected species, like children who needed to be watched and guided. What are they doing here? Someone whispered. No one had an answer. On a dozen different worlds, representatives of a dozen different species watched the same scene play out on their monitors. The Galactic Council chamber had grown silent. They had been debating intervention in the Calreth system for 6 hours. Half the Council wanted to help the vaccine. Half wanted to avoid provoking the Krethic. Everyone wanted someone else to make the decision. Ambassador Chen of Earth had listened to the debate with growing frustration. She was a small woman by human standards with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had argued passionately for intervention. She had presented evidence of Krethic atrocities. She had begged, pleaded, and finally demanded that the council act. They had thanked her politely and continued talking. So she had made a decision. She had sent a message to Earth on a secure channel, bypassing the council entirely. The message was simple. They won't act. We must. The response had come from Admiral Sarah Okonkwo, commander of Earth's Rapid Response Fleet. It was even simpler. On our way, now, as the council representatives watched their monitors in shock. Ambassador Chen allowed herself a small smile. Let them talk. Humanity was done asking for permission. This is a violation of protocol, one of the elder species declared, his translator rendering his outrage in perfect galactic standard. The humans were not authorized to deploy military assets. The vaccine are dying, Chen replied calmly. I wasn't aware we needed permission to help our friends. Friends? You've known them for less than a solar cycle. Chen met his gaze steadily. We don't measure friendship by time. We measure it by need. Back in the Calreth system, Admiral Sarah Okonkwo sat in the command chair of her flagship, the TDF Indomitable. Around her, holographic displays showed the tactical situation in perfect clarity. The vaccine fleet was surrounded. The Krethic had them completely boxed in. It was a textbook encirclement, the kind you saw in military academies as an example of perfect tactical positioning. Admiral Okonkwo had spent 20 years in Earth's military before the first contact. She had commanded special forces operations in 3 different wars. She had learned her trade in the hard school of human conflict, where there were no rules and the only thing that mattered was survival. She looked at the tactical display and saw not a perfect encirclement, but a target-rich environment. All ships, she said into the fleet channel. Her voice carried the flat certainty of someone who had made their decision and would not be moved. Weapons free. Fire on my mark. Around her flagship, 200 human warships powered up their weapons. Missile tubes opened. Railguns charged. Laser batteries aligned. The Krethic had no idea what was about to hit them. Admiral Okonkwo leaned forward in her chair, watching the enemy fleet with cold eyes. She thought of the millions of vaccine civilians on the planet below. She thought of the crew members on those dying ships fighting with courage even as hope died. She thought of the Krethic, who believed their numbers made them invincible. Mark, she said quietly, and the human fleet opened fire. The human missiles reached the Krethic fleet first. They were simple weapons by galactic standards. No exotic particles, no dimensional warping, no quantum entanglement. Just solid fuel, guidance systems, and explosive warheads. But they came in swarms of hundreds and they moved fast. The Krethic bioships had organic sensors that detected the incoming missiles. Their defensive systems activated automatically, spitting out clouds of smaller organisms that acted as countermeasures. Against any other species it would have worked, but the human missiles didn't follow predictable paths. They jinked and weaved, their computer brains talking to each other in microsecond bursts. They learned which countermeasures worked and adjusted their approach. When one missile got destroyed, the others tried something different. 70% of the missiles got through. The explosions rippled across the Krethic formation. Ships shuddered and bled atmosphere. Hulls cracked. The swarm's perfect coordination wavered for just a moment. In that moment, the human railguns fired. Thalos Var watched from his damaged flagship as streaks of light crossed the battlefield faster than his eyes could follow. They were just pieces of metal, his sensors told him. Tungsten rods accelerated to impossible speeds. No energy fields, no exotic matter. Just mass and velocity. When they hit like the fist of an angry god. A Krethic heavy cruiser took a railgun round through its center mass. The ship simply ceased to exist in the middle, the front and back sections tumbling away separately. Another round punched through 3 ships in a row, the tungsten barely slowing as it passed through organic armor like paper. By the ancestors, Thalos whispered. They fight like savages. His tactical officer stared at the display. They fight to win, Commander. There's a difference. The Krethic were reacting now. Their formation shifted, trying to present smaller targets. They returned fire with bioplasma weapons that could melt through standard shields in seconds. Several human ships took hits, their armor glowing white-hot, but the humans didn't slow down. They didn't retreat to regroup. They accelerated forward straight into the teeth of the Krethik guns. Insane, someone muttered on Thalos's bridge. They're going to get themselves killed. Except they weren't. The human ships moved in groups of 6 or 7, coordinating their movements with a precision that matched the Krethik hive mind. But where the Krethik moved in predictable patterns, the humans were chaos incarnate. They rolled, dove, and spiraled through space like fighter craft, not capital ships. One human destroyer took a direct hit that sheared off half its bow. It should have retreated. Instead, it used its remaining engines to barrel toward the nearest Krethik ship. The two vessels collided, and for a moment nothing happened. Then the human ship's reactor overloaded. The explosion took out both vessels and damaged 3 more Krethik ships nearby. Through the radio chatter, Thalos heard a human voice, distorted by interference but still clear. Raven 7 to fleet. Target eliminated. Tell my Wi-Fi. Static. Thalos felt something cold settle in his stomach. These humans had just sacrificed an entire crew to take down one enemy ship. Not because they had to. Because they could. Because it was effective. What kind of species fought like this? Admiral Okonkwo watched the battle unfold with the calm of a chess master. Every move had been planned, every contingency prepared for. She had studied the Krethik for 3 weeks. Ever since Earth's intelligence service had started tracking the swarm's expansion, she knew how they thought, how they fought, what their weaknesses were. The Krethik relied on overwhelming numbers and hive coordination. Take away their coordination and they were just a mob. Communications, she said. Begin electronic warfare protocol. Aye, Admiral. Across the human fleet, specialized ships began broadcasting on every frequency the Krethik used to coordinate. They didn't try to jam the signals. That would be too easy to counter. Instead, they sent false signals. Fake orders. Contradictory commands. The electronic warfare version of shouting fire in a crowded theater. The Krethik formation stuttered. Ships began moving in different directions, responding to orders that contradicted each other. Some tried to advance while others retreated. The perfect coordination that made them so dangerous began to fray. Now, Okonkwo said, all fighters launch. From the bellies of the human carriers, small craft began to pour out like angry bees. They were tiny things, barely 30 meters long, with a single pilot and just enough weapons to be dangerous. Most galactic species didn't use piloted fighters anymore. Drones were safer, more efficient, more logical. Humans still used pilots. The fighters screamed into the Krethik formation at speeds that would have killed most species. Human pilots could handle more G-forces than almost any other race, thanks to their evolution on a heavy gravity world. With neural implants helping them process information and make split-second decisions, they were deadly. A pilot with the callsign Reaper rolled her fighter through a gap in the Krethik point defense and launched missiles at point-blank range into a bioship's engine cluster. The ship began to list, losing power. Splash 1 bug, Reaper called over the radio, her voice filled with adrenaline and joy. Who wants next? Thalos listened to the human chatter with growing disbelief. They were laughing. In the middle of a battle where any mistake meant death, these humans were laughing and joking like they were playing a game. Commander, the Krethik Queen ship is moving. His sensor officer pointed at the display. She's falling back toward the jump point. The Queen ship was the largest vessel in the Krethik fleet, a massive bioconstruct that served as the central coordination node for the swarm. If she escaped, she would carry the swarm's learning about human tactics to the rest of the Krethik territory. The next battle would be much harder. Thalos started to send a warning to the human fleet, but they were already moving. A small group of human destroyers broke from the main battle and burned at maximum acceleration toward the Queen ship. The Queen had escorts, of course. 20 heavy cruisers surrounded her, their weapons tracking the approaching humans. They opened fire and space lit up with bioplasma and exploding ships. 2 human destroyers died in the first volley. The remaining 5 didn't slow down. They didn't try to shoot their way through. Instead, they did something no rational species would attempt. They jumped. One moment they were in normal space taking fire from all sides. The next moment they vanished into faster-than-light transit. 2 seconds later, they reappeared directly ahead of the Queen ship, having jumped through the middle of an active combat zone. The stress of jumping through so much gravitational interference tore one ship apart immediately. The other 4 survived. their hulls screaming with stress fractures, and unleashed everything they had at the Queen, the lead destroyer. The Indomitable's sister ship named Relentless fired her main gun. It was a magnetic accelerator cannon, a MAC gun in human military slang. A 3,000-ton slug of solid metal shot forward at 40,000 kilometers per second. It hit the Queen ship directly in what passed for her bow. The slug punched through the bioorganic armor, through the internal structures, through the central coordination chamber where the Queen mind resided, and out the back. The entry wound was 30 meters wide. The exit wound was 300. The Queen ship shuddered once and went dark. Across the Krathic fleet, the effect was immediate. The hive coordination collapsed. Ships stopped moving in unison. Some continued fighting. Others tried to flee. A few simply drifted as if their crews had forgotten what they were doing. The human fleet showed no mercy. They hunted down every ship that tried to run. They boarded vessels that surrendered, securing them with teams of human marines who moved through corridors with their weapons ready and their faces hidden behind armored masks. In 37 minutes, the battle was effectively over. Thalos sat in his command chair and tried to process what he had just witnessed. His fleet had been dying. The vaccine had been preparing for extinction, and then the humans arrived and turned a massacre into a victory in less than an hour. "Commander," his communications officer said softly. "The human fleet is hailing us." Thalos straightened his uniform and stood. "Put them through." The view screen flickered and Admiral Okonkwo appeared. She was a tall woman with dark skin and eyes that had seen too much death. She looked tired, Thalos thought, but not triumphant. Just done. "Commander Thalos Var," she said. "I'm Admiral Sarah Okonkwo of the Terran Defense Fleet. We've secured the battlefield. Your people are safe." Thalos bowed his head in the vaccine gesture of deepest respect. "Admiral Okonkwo, on behalf of my people, I thank you. You saved our lives when no one else would act." The Admiral's expression softened slightly. "That's what friends do, Commander. Friends." Thalos turned the word over in his mind. The humans had known the vaccine for less than a year. They had no treaties, no ancient alliances, no trade agreements. They were barely recognized by the galactic community, and yet they had come when called. They had fought. They had bled. "Admiral," Thalos said slowly, "I would very much like to meet you in person. Would you grant me the honor of boarding your ship?" Okonkwo smiled. It was a small smile, but genuine. "I'd like that, Commander. I'll send coordinates. Bring whatever crew you need. We've got medical teams standing by for your wounded." The shuttle ride to the Indomitable gave Thalos time to think. Through the viewport he could see the aftermath of battle. Debris fields glittered in the light of Calreth's sun. Some pieces were Krathic biomatter, already starting to decay in the vacuum. Other pieces were metal and composite, the remains of ships that had fought and died. 7 human ships had been destroyed. 14 more were heavily damaged. Thalos had seen the casualty reports. 3,000 humans dead. 3,000 people who would never see their homeworld again. They had died for strangers. Thalos's own casualties had stopped climbing the moment the humans arrived. His final count, 11,000 dead, 16,000 wounded. But alive. His people were alive because the humans had intervened. The Indomitable grew larger in the viewport. She was a massive ship, easily twice the size of any vaccine vessel. Her hull was scarred from battle, with scorch marks and impact craters visible along her flanks, but she flew steady, her engines burning bright. "Shuttle Alpha, you are cleared for docking Bay 3, a human voice said over the radio. "Welcome aboard, Commander." The landing was smooth. As Thalos stepped off the shuttle with his small escort, he found himself in a cavernous docking bay. Human crew members moved with quick efficiency, guiding damaged fighters to repair stations and directing supply crates to storage. Everyone seemed to have a purpose, a task, a direction. A human officer approached, flanked by 2 soldiers in armor. The officer was young by vaccine standards, with brown skin and close-cropped hair. She saluted crisply. "Commander Var, I'm Lieutenant Jackson. Admiral Okonkwo is waiting in the command briefing room. If you'll follow me." Thalos and his escort followed the lieutenant through the ship's corridors. He noticed everything. The walls were plain metal, painted in neutral colors. No decorations, no artwork, no signs of individual expression. Everything was functional, designed for efficiency rather than beauty. But he also noticed the crew. They nodded to each other as they passed. They smiled. They chatted in small groups during what must be brief breaks. Despite the battle they had just fought, despite their losses, there was a sense of life, of energy, of hope. The vaccine were more solemn, more formal. They believed in dignity, in proper behavior, in maintaining composure at all times. These humans seemed almost casual by comparison. Lieutenant Jackson stopped at a door. "The Admiral is inside, sir. Take all the time you need." The door slid open and Thalos stepped into a room with a large table in the center. Holographic displays showed the tactical situation, the fleet status, damage reports, and standing at the head of the table was Admiral Okonkwo. She was taller than Thalos, which wasn't unusual. Most species were taller than the vaccine, but she carried herself with a confidence that had nothing to do with size. She wore a simple uniform, dark blue with minimal decorations. No fancy medals, no ceremonial weapons, just a rank insignia and a nameplate. "Commander Var," she said, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. "Thank you for coming." Thalos grasped her hand. Human hands had only 5 fingers, he noted. The grip was firm but not aggressive. "Thank you for saving my people, Admiral. We owe you a debt that can never be repaid." "You owe us nothing," Okonkwo replied, gesturing to chairs around the table. "Please, sit. Can we offer you refreshment? Water, perhaps?" They sat and a human crew member brought cups of water. Thalos sipped carefully. The water was clean and cold, probably from the ship's recyclers. "Good quality." "Admiral," Thalos began, "I must ask, why did you come?" The Galactic Council explicitly decided not to intervene. "You violated their protocols. There will be consequences for Earth." Okonkwo leaned back in her chair. "Commander, can I be honest with you?" "Please." "We don't care much about the Council's protocols. We've been part of the galactic community for 5 years. In that time, we've watched species die while the Council debates. We've seen genocides happen while everyone talks about non-interference. We've learned that the Council is very good at discussing problems and very bad at solving them." Thalos felt his breathing slow. No one spoke about the Council this way. The Council was ancient, wise, built on thousands of years of tradition. To dismiss it so casually was... Actually, it was refreshing. "So when Ambassador Chen told us the vaccine were dying and the Council wouldn't act, we made a decision," Okonkwo continued. "Sometimes you have to choose between following the rules and doing what's right. We chose what's right. But the cost," Thalos said. "Your people died today. 3,000 of them." Okonkwo's expression tightened. Pain flickered across her face, there and gone in a moment. "Yes, every single one of them volunteered for this mission. We told them the risks. We told them they would be fighting for a species they had never met, in a system far from home with no guarantee of survival. And every single one of them said yes. Why? Because that's who we are, Commander." Okonkwo stood and walked to one of the viewports. Space stretched out beyond, infinite and cold. "Humans have fought each other for thousands of years. We've had wars that killed millions. We've done terrible things to our own kind, but we learned something from all that blood and suffering." She turned back to face him. "We learned that there are things worth fighting for. Freedom, justice, the lives of innocents. And we learned that if you have the power to help someone and you choose not to, then you're just as guilty as those doing the harm." Thalos stood as well. He walked to stand beside her at the viewport. Below he could see his homeworld, blue and green and beautiful, still intact, still alive. "Your people have a very different philosophy than the rest of the galaxy," he said quietly. "I know. Most species see war as something ritualized, controlled, limited. They have rules about when you can fight, how you can fight, what weapons are acceptable. They treat it like a game with referees. And humans don't? No." Okonkwo's voice was hard as steel. "War is hell, Commander. It's messy and brutal and people die. So if we have to fight, we fight to win. We fight to end it as quickly as possible. We use every advantage we have, break every rule we need to break, and we don't stop until the enemy surrenders or can't fight anymore." That sounds ruthless. It is. But you know what's more ruthless? Dragging out a war for years because you're too polite to end it. Letting civilians die because you won't use uncivilized tactics. Following rules of engagement while your people burn. Thalos thought about the Last Stand formation. The perfect circle facing outward, beautiful and dignified and completely useless. The vaccine would have died in that formation. Died with honor. Died following the ancient ways. The humans had arrived and thrown out all the rules. They had fought dirty, fought smart, fought to win, and they had saved his people. "Admiral," he said slowly, "I think I'm beginning to understand your species." Okonkwo smiled. "That's good, because we're going to need friends in the coming days. The Council is not going to be happy with us." "Let me speak to my government," Thalos said. "The vaccine do not forget debts. If Earth faces consequences for saving us, we will stand with you." "I appreciate that, Commander, but be prepared. Standing with humanity might mean standing against a lot of the galaxy. We're not popular right now." "I suspect," Thalos said, "that is about to change." A communications officer appeared at the door. "Admiral, incoming priority message from Earth. Ambassador Chen is on the line from the Council chambers." Okonkwo nodded. "Put her through." The holographic display shifted, showing Ambassador Chen's face. She looked tired but satisfied. "Admiral, Commander Var, I thought you should both know. The Council has voted to censure Earth for unauthorized military action." "Censure?" Okonkwo raised an eyebrow. "That's it?" "That's it. They wanted to do more, but 17 species filed formal objections. Turns out a lot of systems have been watching the Krethic expansion with concern. Your little demonstration today got their attention." "How many species?" Thalos asked. Chen smiled. 17 have formally requested meetings with Earth's diplomatic corps. 32 more have sent informal inquiries. Commander Var, your government has already requested a full military alliance with humanity." Thalos felt his heart racing. A military alliance would mean ships, weapons, training. It would mean the vaccine could defend themselves next time. More importantly, it would mean they stood with a species that actually kept its word. "There's more," Chen continued. "The Krethic have sent a message. After today's defeat, they're willing to negotiate a ceasefire." Okonkwo leaned forward. "A ceasefire? Not a surrender?" "Baby steps, Admiral. We broke their expansion. We proved they can be beaten. That's enough for now." "What about the other species being attacked by the Krethic?" Thalos asked. "The Pelin worlds, the Jarek colonies. Will Earth help them too?" Chen looked at Okonkwo. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then she nodded. "Yes," Chen said. "Earth is forming what we're calling the Rapid Response Fleet. Any species facing extinction-level aggression can request human intervention. Our target response time is 48 hours. 48 hours, Thalos repeated. From request to arrival? From request to arrival, Okonkwo confirmed. We're positioning fleets in key systems. We're building more ships. We're training more crews. The galaxy has been watching species die for too long, Commander. Humanity is offering an alternative." 3 weeks after the Battle of Calreth, the galaxy was still arguing about what had happened. In the Grand Council chamber, representatives from 200 species gathered to discuss the human question. The chamber was a massive space station that orbited a neutral star, built thousands of years ago by species whose names were now forgotten. Its walls displayed the stars themselves, making it feel like the assembled diplomats floated in the void. The honored speaker, a being made of crystalline structures that chimed when it moved, called the session to order. "We gather to address the unauthorized military action taken by the Terran species in the Calreth system." Ambassador Chen sat in the human delegation's seats. She was alone. Earth had only been granted a single representative on the council, and she was it. Around her, hundreds of other species whispered and gestured. Some looked at her with anger, others with curiosity, a few with something that might have been respect. The humans violated 17 separate protocols. A Korath representative declared. The Korath were an old species, ancient and proud. They had been enforcing galactic law when humanity was still living in caves. They deployed military forces without council approval. They engaged in combat within a contested system. They used weapons banned under the Civilized Warfare Accords. The Civilized Warfare Accords, Chen replied calmly, were written by species who could afford to fight civilized wars. The vaccine were facing extinction. Every hour we waited meant more deaths. The council would have acted in time, another species argued. The council had been debating for 6 weeks, Chen shot back. How many more weeks did the vaccine have? How many more days? The honored speaker chimed loudly, calling for order. Ambassador Chen, your species' actions, while effective, set a dangerous precedent. If every species acts independently without council approval, we descend into chaos. Chen stood. She was small compared to most beings in the chamber, but her voice carried. Honored speaker. With respect, the council has become very good at maintaining order and very bad at maintaining justice. You have rules about when you can fight, how you can fight, who you can help, but you have no rule that says you must help species facing genocide. We have the principle of non-interference. The Korath representative insisted. Non-interference, Chen said, is just a fancy way of saying you watched people die and did nothing. The chamber erupted in noise. Some species shouted in agreement. Others roared their disapproval. The honored speaker had to chime repeatedly to restore order, but Chen wasn't finished. The Terran government has a message for this council. We respect your institution. We respect your history, but we will not wait for permission to save lives. Any species facing extinction-level threat can request human assistance. We will respond within 48 hours. You cannot promise that, the Korath said. You lack the resources, the ships, We have 12 fleets deployed across the galaxy as of this morning, Chen interrupted. 48 ships per fleet, all equipped with faster-than-light drives that are twice as fast as standard galactic engines. All crewed by volunteers who have trained for exactly this mission. The chamber went silent. Chen pulled up a holographic display. It showed a map of the galaxy with human fleet positions marked in blue. They were positioned like a net, covering major shipping lanes and trouble spots. This is the Terran Rapid Response Network. It went operational 3 hours ago. This is madness, someone whispered. They're positioning themselves as the galaxy's police force. Not police, Chen corrected. Protectors. There's a difference. Police enforce laws. We protect lives. Another delegate, this one from the Pellan system, stood. The Pellans were a peaceful species, known for their art and philosophy. They were also currently being invaded by the Krethic. Ambassador Chen, my people formally request human assistance, Chen nodded. Request received. Fleet 7 will arrive in your system in 34 hours. The Pellan delegate's relief was visible. Around the chamber, other species began to murmur. If the humans could save the vaccine, maybe they could save others too. The Korath representative stood again. This is unacceptable. The humans are undermining the council's authority. Then maybe the council should start exercising some authority, Chen replied. Start protecting people instead of just talking about it. She gathered her materials and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, the debate continued. But Chen knew the truth. Debates didn't matter anymore. Actions mattered. Results mattered, and humanity was about to show the galaxy what results looked like. On Earth, in the Terran Defense Headquarters, Admiral Okonkwo reviewed the latest reports. 12 fleets deployed, 48 ships each, 576 total vessels representing 60% of Earth's military capacity. It was a massive gamble. If someone decided to attack Earth while her forces were spread across the galaxy, humanity would be vulnerable. But that was a risk they had to take. Her second-in-command, Admiral James Torres, entered the command center. Admiral, we're getting requests. A lot of requests. How many? 37 species so far. Some are facing active threats. Others just want human ships nearby as a deterrent. Okonkwo frowned. We can't be everywhere at once. We need to prioritize. Already done. We're focusing on species facing immediate extinction threats. Everything else goes on a waiting list. What about our resources? Can we sustain this pace? Torres pulled up logistics reports. It's going to be tight. We're building ships as fast as we can, but training crews takes time. We're also burning through ammunition at a rate that concerns supply division, and we're going to need more bases, more supply depots, more of everything. Then we build them, Okonkwo said. This is what Earth signed up for when we decided to intervene in Calreth. We don't get to back out now. Some people back home are getting nervous, Torres warned. There are protests. People asking why we're spending resources on alien species when we have problems at home. Okonkwo had heard about the protests. They were small but growing. People who thought Earth should focus on itself, not on saving the galaxy. People who remembered the wars humanity had fought against itself and wondered if aliens were worth dying for. What do you think, James? She asked. Are we doing the right thing? Torres was quiet for a moment. My grandfather fought in the last war, he said finally. The one that almost ended human civilization. He used to tell me that the only thing worse than fighting is watching people die and doing nothing. He said that's what destroys your soul. So you think we're doing right? I think we're doing what humans do best, Admiral. We fight, we protect, We refuse to accept that some deaths are inevitable. He smiled. Plus, we're really pissing off some of the elder species. That's got to count for something. Okonkwo laughed. It felt good to laugh after weeks of stress and battle. All right. Keep me updated on fleet movements. And tell Fleet 7 they're cleared for the Pellin operation. Rules of engagement are the same as Calreth. Which rules were those again? The ones where we win. In the Pellin system, the Krethic invasion was in its final stages. 3 Pellin worlds had already fallen. The 4th and last was under siege, its orbital defenses failing, its people preparing for the end. The Pellin military commander, Weaver Synth, watched her displays with growing despair. Her name wasn't really Weaver or Synth. Pellin names were complex combinations of sounds that most species couldn't pronounce. She had adopted a simpler name when dealing with other species. Not that it mattered now. She was about to die. Commander, we're reading spatial anomalies, her sensor operator reported. Multiple contacts emerging from faster-than-light travel. Synth felt her heart sink. More Krethic, probably. Coming to finish what they started, but then her sensors resolved the signatures and she felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Those are human ships, she breathed. 48 of them. The human fleet dropped out of FTL in perfect formation, directly between the Krethic and the planet. For a moment, nothing happened. The Krethic had learned caution since Calreth. They had adapted, evolved, prepared for fighting humans. The humans attacked anyway. This time there were no speeches, no warnings, no attempts at communication. The human fleet simply opened fire with everything they had, but the Krethic were ready. Their bioships had developed new armor, harder and more resistant. Their formations were looser, preventing the devastating chained railgun shots that had worked at Calreth. They had learned. The humans had learned too. The first wave of missiles carried a new payload. Not explosives, but incendiaries. They splashed liquid fire across the Krethic bioships, fire that burned hot enough to turn organic matter into ash. The Krethic armor, for all its strength, couldn't regenerate fast enough. Ships burned. The human fighters deployed in new patterns, using the planet's gravity well to slingshot themselves into attack runs at velocities that should have been impossible. Pellin sensors tracked one fighter as it accelerated to speeds that would kill most species from the G-forces alone. The human pilot inside was laughing on the open channel. The Krethic tried to adapt again. They released clouds of smaller organisms, biomines that would attach to human ships and bore through their hulls. It was a new tactic, one they had developed specifically to counter human speed and maneuverability. 6 months after Calreth, Commander Thalos Var stood on the bridge of the Indomitable once again. But this time he wasn't a guest. He wore the uniform of a Terran Defense Fleet liaison officer, a position that didn't exist before but had been created specifically for him. The bridge hummed with activity around him. Human crew members moved with their characteristic efficiency, calling out status reports and coordinating fleet movements. Thalos had learned to understand their abbreviated communication style, their casual manner that somehow coexisted with absolute professionalism. Commander Var, Admiral Okonkwo approached from the command deck. Good to have you back aboard. Good to be back, Admiral. Thalos had been on Earth for the past month studying human military doctrine. What he had learned had changed everything he thought he knew about warfare. We're approaching the Jarek system, Okonkwo said. Final destination of the tour. After this, you head home to brief your government. Thalos nodded. He had visited 12 systems in the past 6 months, all places where human fleets had intervened to stop invasions, genocides, or other atrocities. 12 victories, 12 species saved. The humans had lost ships in every battle. They had lost crew. But they kept coming, kept fighting, kept winning. The galaxy was learning to fear humanity, and to hope for their arrival. Admiral, may I ask you something personal? Thalos said. Of course. Do you ever doubt? Do you ever wonder if humanity is taking on too much? Okonkwo was quiet for a long moment, staring at the view screen where stars streaked past. Every day, she admitted. Every time we lose a ship. Every time I have to write letters to families. Every time I see the cost of what we're doing. But then I think about what happens if we don't act. I think about the vaccine fleet in its last stand formation, dying because no one would help. And I know we're doing the right thing. The Council still opposes your actions, Thalos pointed out. The Council can oppose all they want. They're not the ones fighting. They're not the ones dying. Okonkwo turned to face him. You know what I've learned about the Council, Commander? They're very good at preserving the status quo, but sometimes the status quo is wrong. Sometimes it needs to be broken, and humanity will break it, if we have to. The ship's sensors detected the Jarek system ahead. Thalos pulled up the tactical display. The situation was similar to many others he had seen. A hostile fleet, the Targesh this time, besieging a peaceful species. The Galactic Council had been debating intervention for 8 weeks. The human fleet had received the request yesterday and responded immediately. All ships, prepare for combat drop, Okonkwo ordered. Remember, we're not here to fight fair. We're here to win. The acknowledgements came back from 48 ships, 48 captains, thousands of crew members all ready to fight for a species most of them had never even heard of 6 months ago. The fleet dropped out of FTL directly into the combat zone. The Targesh fleet, caught by surprise, scrambled to respond. But they were too slow. They thought in terms of the old warfare, the civilized warfare. They expected warning shots and hails and negotiation. The humans gave them destruction. Thalos watched as the battle unfolded. He had seen this pattern before. The initial missile barrage to disrupt enemy formations, the fighter swarms exploiting the chaos, the capital ships moving in groups, each supporting the others. The absolute ruthlessness in execution. The Targesh fleet broke in 14 minutes. As the human ships secured the battlefield and began rescue operations for survivors, Thalos received a communication from home. It was from the Vaccine High Council. He read the message twice, then went to find Admiral Okonkwo. She was on the command deck, coordinating humanitarian aid for the Jarek colonies. Admiral, I just received word from my government, Thalos said. The Vaccine Confederation has formally requested admission to the Terran Defense Pact. Okonkwo looked up in surprise. The Terran Defense Pact had been formed 3 months ago, an alliance of species who agreed to mutual defense and to support human intervention operations. 10 species had joined so far. The vaccine would make 11, that's significant, Okonkwo said. The vaccine are a major power. Your admission will legitimize the pact in ways we couldn't before. There's more, Thalos continued. The Council is also requesting that the Terran Defense Fleet be granted formal recognition as an independent peacekeeping force, with rights to operate in Council space. They're giving us legitimacy. They're accepting reality. 34 species have joined the pact. 12 more have requested human protection. The Council can either acknowledge your authority or become irrelevant. Okonkwo smiled. I never thought I'd see the day when the ancient Galactic Council backed down. They're not backing down entirely, Thalos warned. There will be restrictions, oversight committees, diplomatic protocols. The Council will try to control humanity through bureaucracy. Let them try. We'll follow their rules when they make sense. When they don't, we'll do what we've always done. And what's that? What's right? Thalos looked around the bridge. He thought about the journey that had brought him here. 6 months ago, he had been preparing to die with honor, following the ancient ways of his people. Then the humans arrived and showed him a different way. A way that valued life over honor, victory over tradition, results over protocols. Admiral, I have a confession, he said. When I first saw human combat tactics, I thought you were savages. No honor, no restraint, no respect for the civilized way of warfare. And now I think the rest of us have been fools. We created all these rules about war, all these protocols and traditions. We made warfare into a ritual, something controlled and predictable. And while we were following our rules, species died, worlds burned, innocents suffered. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Humanity doesn't fight like us because you're savages. You fight like that because you actually want to win. You want to end wars, not perpetuate them. You want to save lives, not sacrifice them on the altar of honor. We're not perfect, Commander, Okonkwo said quietly. We've made mistakes. We've had wars on Earth that killed millions. We know the cost of violence, Kar. That's what makes you different. You know war's true face. The rest of us had sanitized it, turned it into something almost beautiful. You kept it ugly and horrible as it should be, and because you remember what war really is, you're willing to do whatever it takes to end it. A communications officer interrupted. Admiral, incoming message from Earth, Priority 1. Okonkwo pulled up the message. It was from the Terran Defense Council, the civilian government that oversaw military operations. Thalos watched her face as she read, saw her expression shift from neutral to surprise to something that might have been pride. What is it? He asked. The Council is expanding the Rapid Response Fleet. We're authorized to recruit from allied species, not just humans. They're also approving construction of 50 new ships and 3 forward operating bases in allied territory. That's a massive expansion. It's a vote of confidence. The people of Earth see what we're doing out here. They see the lives we're saving. And they want to do more. Thalos felt something warm in his chest. Hope, he realized. Real hope for the first time in years. The vaccine will contribute ships and crews. I know my government has already approved preliminary designs for vessels built to human specifications. We'd be honored to have vaccine ships in the fleet, Okonkwo said. Your people's courage at Calreth inspired a lot of humans. The way you stood against impossible odds, refusing to surrender even in the face of death. That's the kind of spirit we want in the Pact. We stood, Thalos said, but you won. There's a difference. Next time we'll stand together, and we'll both win. The Indomitable began its journey back to human space, mission accomplished. Another species saved, another threat ended. Behind them, the Jarek people were already broadcasting their thanks across every channel, telling the galaxy that humanity had saved them when no one else would. Thalos stood at the viewport watching the stars slip past. He thought about his bondmate and children waiting at home. He thought about the vaccine fleet, currently being retrofitted with human weapons and tactics. He thought about the future. For thousands of years, the galaxy had operated under certain assumptions. That war was civilized, that the strong preyed on the weak, that the Council maintained order through careful inaction, that some deaths were inevitable, some species were expendable, some evils were too big to fight. Then humanity arrived and rejected every single one of those assumptions. They fought without honor codes because they cared more about winning than looking good. They ignored protocols because saving lives mattered more than following rules. They stood up to ancient powers because they believed in justice more than hierarchy. They protected strangers because they thought everyone deserved protection. The galaxy had called them savages, barbarians, reckless and dangerous. The galaxy had been wrong. They weren't savages. They were something the galaxy had forgotten how to be. They were warriors who fought for others instead of themselves. They were protectors who measured success in lives saved, not territory gained. They were friends who showed up when called, no matter the cost. Thalos pulled out his personal communicator and recorded a message for his bondmate. My dearest Sela, he began, I am coming home soon.